Welcome back to the Butler Beat. I'm Matt Rhinesmith. After an election and a runoff, the SGA president and class officers have been determined. Joining me today is sophomore Mike Keller, Butler University's new SGA president. Mike, how are you doing today?
I'm glad to be here.
Good. First off, can you tell me a little bit about the election process itself? I'm sure it's a very long and drawn-out process with a lot of details that go into it. Can you kind of talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. It was by far the most intense 2.5 weeks of my life to date. About 2.5 weeks ago, we were allowed to start officially campaigning. And from then, almost every part of your day involves some sort of trying to get your message out to different people. I went to a large variety of organizations, Greek organizations, just interest clubs, things like that, trying to share what my platform was, what are the changes I were proposing for SGA. Also, you try to have a good web presence by, really getting the word out on Facebook and Twitter and things like that. And then also, just one-on-one campaigning. Almost any person who walked by me in the hallway got to speak to me, make sure that they knew I was running for SGA president. So it definitely was a very active 2 weeks. I got to meet a lot of people through it, and it was certainly intense, but it was also a lot of fun, really.
Did you find yourself having any problems managing your time? Because at the same time you are a student, but you've got all this election stuff that's certainly keeping you busy.
Yeah, absolutely. My academic work didn't stop just because I was running for SGA president. So it took a lot of intense scheduling, a lot of late nights just to make sure everything got done. But I kind of kept myself going through it, reminding myself that if I get the job, my whole year is going to be, like this of making sure I can get all of my commitments done in time. So it certainly took a lot more, awareness of all the responsibilities I had, but I think I was able to do it pretty well.
We had the initial election, and then there was a runoff between you and Kelsey Reynolds. Can you kind of talk about the process of a runoff itself?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a rule for the election that the winner has to win with 50% of the vote plus one. That's a good rule. You don't want anybody taking on the office with only 30% of the student body actually backing them. So initially there were 4 candidates running in this race, which was more than there had been in a long time. And so on the original election day, on Monday, February 27th, I had received enough votes to be in the top 2, but I had not received over 50% of the votes. So therefore, the top 2 candidates go to a runoff on Wednesday, where it was just a one-on-one contest between me and Kelsey Reynolds. And then later after that runoff election, I was declared the winner.
Having 4 candidates in the race this year, did you see any problems with that maybe, or did you see it just maybe made your life a little bit harder during the campaigning period?
It was a little bit more challenging just because you have to have your focus on 3 different challengers instead of just one. But I think for the SGA organization, it was actually a really good thing. You've got 4 different perspectives. Certainly my opponents talked about things that I hadn't even really thought of as far as changes to propose. So that certainly was good for the organization because a lot of those changes are probably going to happen because they were good ideas. So, personally, yeah, it was a little bit more challenging, but overall, I think it's a good thing. I think it's because we've seen a lot more student engagement in SGA this past year. So we really shouldn't be that surprised. I think it might be the new normal to see more candidates like that running.
Technically, right now, your title is, if you will, president-elect.
Yeah.
Can you kind of talk about what that specifically means and where you go from here?
Yeah. So how I like to think of it is now I'm sort of like the shadow president. I will be following Al Carroll around quite a bit, making sure I completely understand the job, all of my responsibilities. I'll sort of also be working behind the scenes a lot to try to piece together my exec team for next year. Butler has a lot of student leaders on here, and a lot of them are involved in things other than SGA and have probably never even considered doing SGA before. But I want the absolute best team I can, so I'm going to be doing some, recruiting, really trying to encourage people to apply for those positions. So a lot of that stuff. So my job from now till about the end of the year, it's not necessarily a very visual position, but it certainly involves a lot of behind-the-scenes work.
So the election itself is over, and you can kind of move on from here. You can, like you said, start establishing a staff and figuring out how you want to go about running things next year. Does it feel good to have it all behind you now?
It really does. There's a lot of the nerves and anxiety have kind of left now that I know that I have the position. But as those things go away, sort of the seriousness of the job sort of starts to settle in as well. I know this is a big task, and I've got I presented a very large platform, so it's going to take a lot of work to try to get all those changes brought in. So the reality of how deep this job really goes is starting to set in. So it's just a different kind of mindset.
Can you recap your platform for us, please?
Absolutely. So it was very broad. It was looking at almost every one of the boards of SGA and presenting little tweaks to try to make it better. On a large scale, particularly, I thought we could do better in utilizing technology. And so I really wanted the SGA to sort of work with our IT department here to really make some good changes, maybe develop a smartphone app for our students here to be able to use and get information from. Also try to enhance our own website a bit just because it's a little dated, I think. And then also some other things that I thought were pretty important. I wanted to see a new student organization grant formed. That way when a new student organization is formed on campus during the year, they'll have some startup funds to sort of help with recruitment, other things, because it's pretty challenging to be able to start a new organization from nothing. And then also I really wanted to try to revamp our PR board a bit, just really kind of expand it, increase the roles and responsibilities of its members, because I think there's a lot of potential there. How you market yourself as an organization really defines how successful people perceive you to be, regardless of if you're actually successful or not. And then just some other things, working with the administration, making sure that all the student voices are heard. I wanted to be a very accessible SGA president. I made the promise to try to be the most accessible SGA president we've ever had. So to do that, throughout my term, I'm going to have weekly office hours that anyone, whether they be a freshman who's not involved in SGA at all, or somebody who's been in SGA their whole time here at Butler, can come and talk to me, share their concerns and ideas, and know that the leadership of SGA is addressing those.
So when do you get started with most of these things? Like you said, this semester you kind of get your feet under you a little bit and figure out exactly what the position entails. But how do you start to implement these things?
So this year is going to be a little new compared to other years in SGA. We're actually working on the budget for next year during the semester, where it's normally done over the summer. So this coming April, they have a budget summit where all the leaders, past and present, are going to come together and really map out what we think the budget should look like for next year. And so that's where a lot of those changes come from, because you got to budget for that new student organization. You got to allocate the funds to see those technology improvements that I'd like to see. So it's coming up pretty soon as far as trying to implement some of those changes.
Going off the budget a little bit, one of the biggest responsibilities of your new position is you have a lot of control over that budget, and it's a very big budget. How do you anticipate controlling that and managing that over the course of the year?
You have to be in good communication with every single person who is in charge of their little line item of the budget. So a good example is program board, because they take up most of the budget because they provide all the programming on campus. And it's really important to be sure to make sure they have what they say they need first, and then also just hold them accountable throughout the year to stay within that, because we want them to spend all that they were given, but then of course not go over it. It's that little game where you want to get just as close as you possibly can, and then you can say you really did a good job.
Have you talked to Al Carroll, the current president, at all? I'm sure he's given you some advice sometime along the way here.
When he called to give me the good news on Wednesday night, we did have a brief conversation. He congratulated me. He did give me a lot of advice, just to say that it doesn't get any easier from there. So, and I truly believe that as well. And he said, me and him will be spending a great deal amount of time for the rest of the semester together. So I'm sure there'll be much more advice to come as well.
Is there one thing that you think Al does very well that you would like to do well yourself in your term?
Yeah, Al is incredibly personable. That is a quality that he was just absolutely his best by far. He can go up to absolutely anybody and have a conversation with them. He's in Starbucks all the time, and he always seems to have a group of people around him just talking to. And naturally, that's not something that I think is as natural for me, but I think it's important for a president to be in constant communication with everybody else on this school. So I really want to try to model him and try to do that.
Mike, congratulations once again.
Thank you very much,
for joining us. Thanks again for joining us on this week's Butler Beat. Join us again next week for more news and sports from the campus of Butler University.